All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this panel on Immersion Vanderbilt, being hosted here by the Office of Experiential Learning and Immersion Vanderbilt. And first and foremost, my name is Charles Atchison. I am the Program Coordinator for Innovation, Arts, and Design in the office. Quickly, I think we're going to do a quick let everybody introduce themselves, and then I will provide a brief overview of Immersion Vanderbilt for everyone. And then we have some student perspectives of the program, the requirement, and what they have done as part of that. And then we will move to answering any and all of your questions. So whoever would like to go first, I'm sorry, I'm totally just throwing you under the bus by being like, are you ready? Go.
I'm ready. Hi, my name is Mackenzie Higgins. I am a senior in the College of Arts and Sciences, majoring in Medicine, Health, and Society on the pre-nursing track. I'm here as a study abroad representative. I studied abroad in Florence, Italy in the spring of my junior year, and I loved it so much that now I'm working in the study abroad office to work as a peer advisor to help other people map out study abroad and have the best experience that they can.
Hello, everyone. I am Tyler Walker. I am a senior study abroad advisor in one of the pathways in the Office of Experiential Learning and Immersion Vanderbilt. I'm one of the advisors. We help with general advising in terms of getting started with study abroad. We also have specific location that each advisor advises for. So I'm in charge of Madrid, Korea, most of Asian programs and whatnot. But it's nice to see everyone here, and I will pass it along.
Hello, my name is Rohan. I'm a senior, and I'm here to represent the research path. So I've been involved with research since my freshman year, and I'm also involved with the undergraduate research journal here, where students can publish their own research or be involved in reviewing other students' research. And yeah.
Hello, I'm Shamal. I'm a senior, majoring in neuroscience and physics. I'm also here representing the research pathway, along with Rohan for the Vanderbilt Undergraduate Research Journal. And I've also conducted research since my freshman year, so I'll be speaking a bit more about that as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, so much. So Immersion Vanderbilt is the degree require initiative that all undergraduate students here at Vanderbilt will accomplish by the time that they graduate. Typically, all students fall within the 6 different pathways of Immersion Vanderbilt. We've heard about research. We've heard about study abroad. Study abroad was previously a separate office, the Global Education Office, but our 2 offices have recently merged. So if you see Global Education Office, that is also referring to our study abroad team. The other pathways are the Innovation, Arts, and Design pathway that I'm the program coordinator for. And then we have the other 3 that are internship, civic and community engagement, and leadership and professional development. The goal of Immersion Vanderbilt is to provide students a learning opportunity that is more hands-on than I think we typically think about for, especially like lecture classrooms, allowing students to go out into the communities, whether they are local, global, and really not only learn, but also make an important impacts and really help shape the world that they want to make. Like I said, all students will complete Immersion Vanderbilt by their senior year, and all students engage in a series of different experiential learning opportunities or immersive experiences, as we call them, where students go into different spaces, whether it's research labs, going abroad, engaging in creative pursuits. And then the second half of that equation is the culminating project, which is another way of thinking about that is the showcase of learning. Students will demonstrate what they've learned through some sort of deliverable project that they get to work on with a faculty mentor. That is one of the things that makes Immersion Vanderbilt truly unique from any other experiential learning initiatives from our peer universities, is that one-on-one mentorship with a world-class faculty member. With that collaboration, they develop their project and can be anything or almost anything under the sun. We've seen everything from research presentations and papers to travel journals to plays. If you can dream it, the students can make it. one of the things that is also really nice about this opportunity is that it gives students a chance to really engage with their passions, particularly things that maybe do not necessarily fit into their degree program. We have lots of students who are research focused that will then engage with opportunities over in the Wondery, like Art Lab, where they will use their research to create works of art, as well as the Fiber Arts Fabrication Lab, Fab Lab, and with sewing, as well as all the other opportunities that the Wondery can help students with. Our office is now 16 people? 16 people, and we help guide students throughout this process and help them with opportunities and guide them to where they'd like to go. And I think that is a great kind of segue that if you all would like to tell us a little bit more about your research and where you've presented it at here on campus.
Okay, so as for my research, I started my freshman year remotely actually during the COVID-19 pandemic. Back then, because of the nature of the COVID virus and all, and me studying from home, the main way for me to get into research, which I really wanted to do since my freshman year, was to do computational research. During the COVID-19 pandemic, I became really interested in immunology, specifically, I guess, like the creation of the vaccines, and I guess trying to sequence the virus and trying to understand it more on a molecular level. And so that led me to join the Department of Pathology, Microbiology, and Immunology in my freshman year in the laboratory of Dr. Janet Markle, which specifically studies these rare diseases that lead to immunological deficiencies in pediatrics and neonatals. These are genetically inherited that occur in many families where there's first cousin marriages that lead to mixing of the gene pool. And so my lab really focuses on getting samples of blood plasma shipped from these countries where there are physicians treating these patients. And so we use these samples to understand more of the pathogenesis and what's really going on in these kids. And in addition to that, we also perform a lot of wet lab, meaning we do a lot of cell culturing, a lot of tissue, tissue sample collection and examination. And we do this really to understand what is going on in these kids. The samples that we receive are their actual whole blood cells, and what we do with that is we actually get to understand what deficiencies they have in what particular types of cells. And this sort of leads to the creation of therapeutics or the usage of already created therapeutics by these physicians to help create, essentially implement a treatment plan for these kids. And so my role in the lab, since my freshman year, was mostly on a computational level, as I'd mentioned earlier, because of the me studying from home. So I worked on the more data analytics end of actually analyzing these samples and trying to understand what is going on. And so I've worked with this lab now for 3 years, and I've presented at different events, including the Vanderbilt Undergraduate Research Fair. This was also a project that I had done through Immersion Vanderbilt, through their Vanderbilt Undergraduate Summer Research Program after my freshman year. This program is essentially funding provided by Immersion Vanderbilt to do research over the summer at Vanderbilt, and that can eventually accumulate into your Immersion Vanderbilt project. And so after that, my final presentation was at the Undergraduate Research Fair. But in addition to that, I've also presented at other events, such as a retreat for my department that was held last year, and at a conference last November. And in addition to that, earlier I had mentioned that I'm also part of the Undergraduate Research Journal. Both Rohan and I are here to discuss a little bit about that. But essentially, our goal as the Undergraduate Research Journal is to make more accessible the process of publishing a research paper as well as reviewing a research paper to undergraduate students. We believe that this sort of an experience would be very valuable to those who are interested in pursuing a career in or adjacent to research in the future, whether that be a PhD or an MD PhD or even medical degree or other degrees as well. And so the Undergraduate Research Journal is an interdisciplinary journal as well. So we span across all 4 of Vanderbilt's colleges, the Colleges of Arts and Science, the College of Engineering, the Peabody College, as well as Blair School of Music. And across all 4 of these schools, we span across 7 different disciplines that essentially encompass all the majors at Vanderbilt that students would do research in. And our goal in doing this is essentially to create a research community where students who are interested in learning more about research, but also who are doing research, can come together, sort of work together in reviewing papers or even sending papers to us to publish if they're interested in publishing in our journal. This is a fully run undergraduate research journal in the sense that there are undergraduate reviewers, there are undergraduate students who are sending papers to us as well. And we also receive support from Immersion Vanderbilt for this endeavor. We have had their supports for several years now. And in addition to that, we've also partnered with faculty and with graduate students to help with the training of these undergraduate students. Our main goal as the Undergraduate Research Journal is so that everyone can learn or take something away from it. And so we wanted to make it more so an educational opportunity for everyone involved. And that's an endeavor that Rohan and I both have been involved in on the research end. And how that relates to Immersion Vanderbilt is that many students have sent their papers to us to publish in our journal as their final project for Immersion Vanderbilt. And so we're happy to do this partnership with, or to receive support from Immersion Vanderbilt for this endeavor. And yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. I'll give it to Rohan.
So I guess I can speak briefly about my research experience. Is like, I started out in high school working for the Navy in a traumatic brain injury lab. And I really loved traumatic brain injury and the whole disease pathway for it. And so when I came here, I decided to do something similar. And so now I also work for a neurotrauma lab here. I do clinical and translational research. And I've been involved in that since my freshman year. But in terms of my immersion project, I actually went to a different place in Maryland to do traumatic brain injury research. And that's what I've been using for so the research I'm using for my immersion project wasn't done at Vanderbilt, and that's an option as well to do that. And so through that research, I was able to have it published, but also present it in Brazil, in London, various projects, and really get to meet a lot of cool people in that particular field, but also other fields within surgery or trauma. And so it's been a very cool experience, and thanks to Immersion Vanderbilt for being able to provide that opportunity, and so that's a great opportunity for a lot of students to be able to be a part of.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for sharing. Yes, and as they mentioned, there is the Vanderbilt Undergraduate Research Fair that's actually held twice a year, once in the fall and another time in the spring, that we typically have, I think, 180-ish to 200 students presenting at. It is a very, I would say informative, but I look at the posters, and I'm a humanities person, and I see Greek and Greek letters half the time, and my eyes glaze over, and I'm like, yes, I believe that is very insightful research that you're doing. Well done, congratulations. But the fair is also typically hosted or has a keynote speaker that most recently have both been Provost Raver and Chancellor Diermeyer. Actually, I believe you all got to meet Chancellor Diermeyer at the last one. So it is a very frequented and as one of our most common or most frequented pathways for students pursue. And actually, if it's not the most, then study abroad is the most. And I believe Tyler can tell us a little bit more, and then Mackenzie can, because I believe, Tyler, this year is the largest study abroad spring cohort we've ever had.
Yes, coming out of the mainstream of the pandemic with the travel revenge. I don't know if you've heard that, the travel revenge. So with Study Abroad, we have over 140 programs in all 7 continents. That includes Antarctica. We do have students go there through our Argentina program. And our motto is that every student, if with preparation can study abroad. With that, students just need to have most of the time at least a 2.7 GPA to study abroad. We say about 50% of the student body has studied abroad at some point in their undergraduate career. That includes either a semester program that's either a fall or spring program or year, a Maymester, and a summer program as well. So we take that into high regard, and it's not hard for any of our majors. I know way back when, it's like engineering students can't study abroad. I'm one of the engineering liaisons with Views, and I can say last spring alone, we sent over 100 VIEW students abroad, and that's out of our 524 we sent, so 1/5 of that population was engineering students. We send the Blair students, humanities usually don't have an issue, and then our Peabody, like HOD type students have no issues as well. Sometimes they hear whispers, it's like, oh, how do I get it to count? But we have a course equivalency where when students study abroad, they just have to get courses evaluated, and it will go towards their major, minor, and or graduation credits. So our main task as study abroad advisors and with our peer advisors is to make sure that students are staying on track academically with their 4-year plan. We always say the earlier the better. Come freshman year, preferably starting with passports to make sure it's renewed, or just starting a plan out with meeting with your academic advisors. Students can study abroad as soon as a Maymester after their freshman year, so essentially after 2 semesters, and then transfer students, they have to have completed 1 semester. A lot of our freshmen like to go to London School of Economics for the summer, other programs as well. It just depends on what they're trying to fulfill in terms of their degree audit. So that's a little snippet about study abroad. I would say right now we're going through our spring 2024 applications, and we have about 686 applicants. So even if we have a melt rate, we'll still beat that 524. So we are excited, and they are all over the country. And we are with them from preparation, during application, when they're abroad. If sometimes our advisors will go when we do site assessment to visit students, but we check in with them, we check in with our providers. That's something unique to Vanderbilt. We use providers, so kind of I won't say they've been vetted and they're on site with the students. So we try to mimic the support students have here abroad, so there's not a huge adjustment. And if there is an issue, we're right on call with the students to try to get anything academically, emotionally or mentally, if they're kind of going through distress or just adjusting. And I'm like, it's been 10 days. Like, just let's give yourself some time, let's sleep. Or if it's just academic continuity. So with that, I'll bring it over to Mackenzie to talk about her experience in Florence.
Yeah. One more thing relating to the study abroad office. If you are a freshman or sophomore or the parent of a freshman or sophomore, we do overviews every Monday at 4 p.m. led by me. And this is really a great place to start if your student is interested in study abroad but is kind of unsure of how the process works. Any questions they want to get answered, we can do that in that time. And it's a great way to also just get excited about study abroad in general. But like I said, I studied abroad in Florence, Italy with CET Florence, so that was the partner that we worked with. I took 4 classes there. I took beginner Italian, food and culture, cross-cultural psychology, and wine studies, which is a fan favorite at CET Florence. And I think in addition to just the great professors that I had while I was at CET Florence, I think the most beneficial part to me was really the experiential learning component of being in Florence. I would say 1 out of every 2 classes that we had in a week per course was doing something out in the city. And this was just a great way to really feel connected to the city while I was there. Some highlights of this included we went to a local olive oil production company and really got to see kind of the process from beginning to end of how they produce their olive oil. Also, in my beginner Italian class, we would learn the names of a bunch of different foods, and then we would have to go to the market and buy them and record ourselves buying them in Italian, which was a lot of fun, and I hadn't taken Italian ever before, so it was completely new to me. So definitely a learning curve there, and kind of have to put your pride to the side, and but it was a great learning experience. And then in addition to our experiential learning through our courses, our program offered a lot of excursions. And I think this was really my favorite part of the program. Some of the highlights of this included just doing a hike with the people in our program. One of my favorite things was also a dinner with Italian friends. So our activities coordinators would bring their friends, and we would get to sit down at a restaurant and have dinner provided and kind of just compare experiences of 20-year-olds living halfway across the world. And it was kind of nice to see that there is really kind of a universal experience of this age. So that was great. And then I think that I really felt support not only from CET Florence, but also from the study abroad office throughout my experience. I felt really prepared to go abroad, as it was something that I was a little bit nervous about. I am from Nashville, and I've never been away from home for more than 2 weeks before, so this was a really big step for me. But the preparation and that the study abroad office provided, I think made me feel really, really confident going into the program, and then that also allowed me to get the most out of the experience and push myself kind of past the boundaries of maybe what I was used to at Vanderbilt. And also the staff at CET Florence was like some of the kindest and friendliest people. They really cared about how you were doing, what was going on in your life, what was going on back at home. So it kind of just made it feel like a really well-rounded and nice experience overall. And then I kind of double dip in terms of immersion. So I went study abroad for my immersive experience. However, I also completed research at Vanderbilt, and I will be presenting in the undergraduate research fair in the spring. So you can kind of cross paths with these 6 categories of immersion, and I think it's very common for students to do that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very rarely, I think, any one pathway is the only one that a student goes down for their Immersion Vanderbilt. That is one of the aspects of Immersion Vanderbilt that is also very exciting, and I think has been hinted, or has definitely been noted with our through the our student presenters, is that Immersion Vanderbilt is very much for each and every student to do exactly what they would like to do as best as we can, and it's very individualized. That there are no 2 Immersion Vanderbilts that are the same, or conceivably probably ever will be. And that's one of the things that's I think is really exciting about this opportunity for students, and one of the things that is very exciting for us in the office to help facilitate students achieve. So yeah, I think at this point maybe we, on that note of individuality, turn it back over for questions, or turn it over for questions, and get to as many as we possibly can from you all. Yes.
First, I want to compliment you. It's very impressive. Different experiences. We're all freshmen, and this is a big priority for our program. Two questions on the international experiences. One, I know you were beginning to have any of the students go over and see what classes do you look like?
Yes, so it depends on the program. So I would say there are immersive language immersion programs if students want to immerse themselves in a program where they are taking the language to kind of expand on that, or taking their courses in that local language. But majority of our programs, our courses are taught in English, so we make it very accessible. Or it can be a mixture of both, where students have the choice to take it in English or in that local language. I would say a majority of our students aren't language immersive students, so that's a small subset. So it is very accessible. So we send students to Spain, Japan, China. You don't necessarily need to know the language. They might put you in a beginner course like they did with Mackenzie, just so that you learn how to get around in the society, but it is not a requirement for all of our programs. Great question. So we have a fall-spring inbalance. Everything at Vanderbilt seems to be like a whisper hearsay. So students at Vanderbilt tend to go junior spring semester, but technically they can go anytime after those first 2 semesters of their freshman year, or after finishing 1 semester there, after transferring in to Vanderbilt. So we sent sophomores, juniors, either fall or spring, and then seniors minus engineering students, unfortunately, but every other college, they can go fall semester of their senior year. So whatever fits into their academics, we try to relay that. We try to motivate students to go in the fall. We say weather is better. You're starting with most programs, but we do have more students who will go in the spring just because of what they've heard from their friends or upperclassmen.
Yes.
Could you elaborate a little more about the final project? What are the basic requirements, especially since the experiences are so different? How is it evaluated?
Yeah, great question. So, question was how what the culminating projects kind of look like, what the requirements are. Really, the answer to that is it is a collaboration between the student and their faculty advisor. There is no specific requirement for necessarily length or the design of the project. It is something that the student and their faculty advisor will work together to develop what they want to pursue. I think a lot of times for students, especially coming from the humanities and, well, I'm recently from grad school, when we hear project, we think and automatically assume 25-page paper and the shivers go down the spine, the cold sweats start immediately, and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, it is really very open on what the students want to make and create. So the project typically, we tend to suggest that students don't begin it until senior year, and they can begin at any time anytime sooner that they like after they've completed at least one immersive experience. The immersive experiences form the foundation of the projects. So what the student chose to do for their immersive experience or multiple, one of our big pushes starting this year is to really emphasize that students can do as many experiences as they can, and we encourage them to declare as many as they can, and if they feel so inclined, to combine them in some meaningful way. A lot of times maybe students will do a study abroad and an internship experience and kind of put that together in a way of maybe their project might be a how-to guide for their internship with a perspective for an international applicant in the future, something along those lines. So the project itself, it's unfortunate or not. In some ways, the answer is somewhat vague, but it is it's between the student and the faculty member primarily.
If I could add something to that, I have definitely seen the range of final immersion projects. Last year, one of my good friends, he was a volunteer firefighter in his hometown, and so he made a fire safety flyer based on some of the fires he had worked to put out, and then I also had friends that wrote 30-page research papers, so it can really fall anywhere on that spectrum, and I think from my perspective, if it's something that you're passionate about and that you have really enjoyed your immersive experience with, it can be turned into a final project.
Yeah, and actually to build on one of the things you said there at the end, when I advise and meet with students, there's always two things that I try to really emphasize for them to keep in mind when they're deciding what they want to do for their culminating project. And the first one is, what are you passionate about? There's a lot of resources here at Vanderbilt that are not readily available once students leave. So take advantage of that. If you've ever been curious about learning to cast pottery or play guitar, there are resources for that. But the other thing that we always, or at least I always emphasize, is what is going to help you with your next step after Vanderbilt? What is going to best suit you for graduate school, professional school, or to begin down your career path? So yeah, what can really help students prepare for their next thing, but also keep in mind, passion is a really important aspect of everything we do, and just if you've always wanted to learn how to sew, sorry, I'm the arts side of me always comes out whenever I talk about this stuff, so I always gravitate towards that. If you've always wanted to learn how to sew, there is a world-class lab here that will teach you how to be a fully functioning seamstress, seam person by the time you're done. So, yeah.
And the thing to notate, I don't know if we mentioned that The reason it's a degree requirement is because this immersive experience or this final culminating project is on the student's transcript. So they can pull from these experiences, choose a title, and we say be very particular about how you choose that title because it's going to be in your transcripts. Because when you're sending out your transcripts or your CV, potentially they're only seeing what you did in the classroom. They're only seeing those grades. So with it on your transcript, they can expand on what you did and then click on that or ask about that project, and you have now evidence, be it being a journal entry in the Vanderbilt Research Journal or anything tangible. So it's just adding this extra oomph that our students have compared to their counterparts in other universities. Other questions?
Yeah, internships is a very frequent, another very frequent pathway for students. We help facilitate, but primarily I think Career Center is a really good resource for students to find different internships that might be available to them. Yeah, internships, civic and community engagement, we have, that's also a robust opportunity for students to be engaged with their community. Well, yeah, it's literally it's on the tin, isn't it? To start to help make impacts in the world around them, and affect the kind of change that they want in the world. And then the other two are leadership and professional development. One of the more, I think, particularly an interesting or a really cool avenue for that is the ROTC, both Navy and Army programs that are here, but it's certainly not limited to that by any stretch of the imagination. And then the final one is Innovation, Arts, and Design, and that is really really centers creativity in all of those. All of these have creativity undergirding them. There's no question about that. But yeah, Innovation, Arts, and Design, particularly for like senior design projects, for engineers, as well as Blair. Blair would be the most, I guess, obvious extrapolation of that. But yeah, we have lots of students that will take one or two art classes and pursue that as well for their Immersion Vanderbilt.
Just to give an example of something that could be kind of fall under the civic and community engagement, I have a friend, she did her Peabody Scholars project in Paris last summer, and she worked with an organization there that helps out the homeless population, which is something she'd been working with homeless folks in Nashville, and she really kind of wanted to combine maybe wanting to get abroad with her Peabody Scholars project with civic and community engagement.
Yeah, we absolutely encourage them to come speak with us first, because then we can, if we're not the best answer, we can find the best answer for them. And one of our goals for our office is that we shoot to meet with every undergraduate student at some point during their time here at Vanderbilt, whether that's when they're coming in as a first year and they're curious about just like, I've heard about this requirement, can you give me the lay of the land, to we might not see somebody until senior year when they're trying to figure out a faculty member that they would like to work with. But so yes, we absolutely encourage and welcome students to come in as frequently as they'd like. I know Study Abroad sees many, I see many familiar faces walking by my office to the Study Abroad folks. But yes, we definitely encourage them to reach out to our office first, because then we can help send them to the people who can give the best answers.
Yes, and we're very collaborative, in the words of our chancellor, radical collaboration. So we use a lot of those resources so we're not double dipping the Career Center, the Wandry, with views if they're doing their projects, to make sure, like, if you're already doing something cool or it's ingrained even in your degree, like, we want you to meet with us so we are tracking it, and that we can just keep you on par with that, so you're not coming up senior year confused or nervous about a degree requirement that you kind of heard about. So we're here to make sure we guide them through that whole process. There's never we see our students all the time and we love seeing them. So a lot of my students are like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." I'm like, "Nope, that's why we're here." So please send them our way.
Yeah, and honestly, it's just really exciting to hear from the students because everybody is doing such unique and interesting and just thoughtful, thought-provoking things that it's honestly, that is probably the biggest highlight of my position is just getting to hear what the different projects students are pursuing. So yes, we absolutely encourage frequent guests, frequent flyers, absolutely.
And even within study abroad, I would say too, students can do internships while they're abroad. We've had some students do some research. It still falls under, it might actually bleed over into the other pathways, but there's also opportunities to do that. I had a student who was in Spain, who was doing an internship for students for mental health in children in Spain, and I think taking notes or minutes, I can't remember the depth of it, but they have those opportunities as well to potentially drop a course and then receive credit for the internship and or research.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, you said the experiences can be any time, there's several years, but the project is usually your senior year. So can you do it earlier? And my main reason for asking is you said it goes on your transcript, and I'm just thinking about applying to a professional school or a graduate school. Could you just talk a little bit about timing on that? And if you can do it your junior year, you really don't want students to do it.
Yeah, primarily the main reason we encourage students to wait until their senior year is because they can do as many experiences as they wish. They can only do one project, and once it is accepted by the university, we cannot go back. They are done, which for a lot of students is hooray, like they're very excited about that. But we never want a student to potentially complete their Immersion Vanderbilt, their culminating project too early, then go to Spain, have a life-changing experience, and then not be able to pursue that for their project, for their transcript. So that's why we really emphasize, or really more suggest that students wait until senior year, but they can complete Immersion Vanderbilt at any point as long as when they work through the workflow that we have for students, they can complete it junior year. And yeah, certainly if it makes sense to have something kind of like official on the record, on the books for applying for graduate school or professional school, yeah, that certainly makes sense. And yeah, whatever best suits the student, that's ultimately our goal. So yes, no, thank you, that's a great question.
Regarding study abroad, how far in advance do students need to make those plans? And then also, are they registering for courses directly through Vanderbilt, through local universities, or is there a third party that organizes?
Great question. So I always say preparation, or our office always says preparation is key. So I would say start as early as freshman year. I would say also that meet with us a year before the student intends to go abroad. So if they're trying to go abroad spring 2025, they should start meeting with us, Study Abroad Advisor, spring 2024, same with fall. So always a year in advance so that, one, they can understand how study abroad works at Vanderbilt. As Mackenzie said, we work with these providers. We don't technically have Vanderbilt staff on site, so they're vetted through our providers. You may hear things like CIE, CETS, she mentioned IES. So I would say a year in advance before. And regarding credits, students, depending on the program, will either take courses directly at a university or at a study center. So we have two types: direct university enrollment, so there'll be a local university involved. They are attending that university like any other student. For example, the University of College London, University of Glasgow in Scotland, Ireland. No one hurt me for getting the two wrong. In Spain, we have Carlos Ceberos, or we say UC3M, so they have those direct enrollment courses where students get these courses evaluated before they go abroad so they understand the type of credit they'll receive, if that being a core course, being like an engineering course that is equivalent to our course, or a depth elective or any type of elective, same with any other major. Or they take courses at a study center where it's a location on site where local staff is hired by our providers to teach students in a local classroom setting, and their peers will be usually other students studying in American universities, and they also get the same type of credit in terms of core, major, minor, and or graduation credit. You had something?
Yeah, and in terms of registering for classes themselves, it's going to be through either the university or the study center. And the process is really just going to depend on the size and course offerings of the program. For example, my program offered less than 15 courses. So basically, we just ranked every course from which one we would want first to which one we would want the least. And I ended up getting my first 4 courses. At some of the larger direct university enrollments, it's going to be a little bit more like Vanderbilt enrollment, where it's a little tricky sometimes. You need to have a lot of backup options. So it really just depends on the program with how specifically the course enrollment works.
Yeah, and going off that, so that's why we have them prep those backup courses, because even at Vanderbilt where courses aren't guaranteed, we can't guarantee them abroad, where we can have some push power in terms of me as an advisor saying they need this course to stay on track academically, or I need you to open up an additional section depending on how many of our students need it. So for example, we had operating systems in one of our Madrid programs, and it was only offered in the fall, and I was like, oh, we have 25 students that are CS students that need to take this course, and they were able to talk with the engineering department abroad, and they opened up a spring course, and they kept it there. So we try to make sure that academic continuity is abroad, and the students get what they need to stay on track academically with that preparation.
From a financial standpoint, do the study abroad experiences net out to be roughly the same costs as a semester at Vanderbilt, or are there additional costs to keep in mind?
Yes, so we usually say studying abroad is equal or about the same as being at Vanderbilt. If you have financial aid, a student's financial aid packet minus work study, which I believe they reallocate, is applicable to their study abroad experience. Unfortunately, that is only for semester programs, so if they're doing a Maymester or summer, that will actually be financially it isn't applicable to those two, but we do have scholarships through our larger immersion office as well as Global Summer Fellows, which students can use, and we try to meet the students' needs 100% depending on the structure of that program. So there are some programs that can be a little bit more expensive, London, Australia, depending on cost of living. Financial aid will look at that and adjust the aid. Thing to notate is that when a student studies abroad, they are charged Vanderbilt tuition. And I won't say unfortunately, that's just the policy Vanderbilt has created. So they're charged Vanderbilt tuition and usually a program fee, which includes their housing, their international health insurance, which is required. So those 2 items are charged. And then any remaining costs, if there's aid, will be reimbursed to the student, or for the parent, if you're paying that, there's no other hidden fees in terms of student health or lab fees or things like that. That will be then sent to the student to use while they're on site. So we try to make it as on par as being physically at Vanderbilt.
Yeah, and speaking as someone who studied abroad and is on financial aid, our financial aid officer was very, very well versed in the study abroad process and how finances with study abroad work, so it was really easy to get all of that worked out. And then, like you said, is the opportunity for reimbursement if the amount of money that you're typically getting at Vanderbilt is more than enough to cover your study abroad program. And my family was actually able to use that to cover some of the cost of my airfare, which is one of those large out-of-pocket costs. And so that was really nice.
And some of our providers, depending on the provider, can provide flight stipends, some scholarships as well. I've seen some students receive up to $5,000, sometimes $2,000 for flights. And the financial aid office also does advancement. So if a student is highly dependent on their financial aid package to buy airfare or things before the start of the program, they will look at our budget sheets, which are online, and say, okay, yeah, you need an advancement. We'll provide these extra $2,000 for you to buy your plane ticket now. We're not going to wait until a week before to buy your plane ticket before you go abroad. So we make sure that students understand that, or they ask us questions, or we are in contact with the financial aid office constantly to make sure their needs are being met. Any other questions? Okay. Yeah.
I have a question for the folks doing research. So could you talk about how you did that with your classes? Like how, was it one day a week, like several hours? How did you manage that? And when do you recommend students think about doing that? Is it okay freshman year? Should they wait to spring?
So in terms of like the timing, I think most people who engage in research will start at some point in their late freshman or sophomore years. And most faculty at Vanderbilt are very accommodating. They really want to have undergraduate students, including faculty at VUMC, the medical center. They all want to have students as well. And so they're very accommodating to course schedules. But in terms of hours, it can vary substantially depending on the project. There have been some weeks where maybe it was like a lighter week, but I've had other weeks where I was putting in, maybe 10 plus hours into research, but that would be like, culminating towards the end of a presentation or a paper or something. So there's a lot of ways to be involved in terms of like the time commitment. It's very doable with coursework, especially if you plan ahead. And there's actually courses you can take at Vanderbilt that are research credit courses. And so those would also count towards your major or minor requirements. And a lot of majors have required research.
And I guess to add to what Rohan had said, I started my research. I reached out to the labs 2 weeks after I graduated from high school because I also did high school research and I knew I wanted to go into research in college. I wanted to reach out as soon as possible and get started. So I started actually the summer before I even matriculated to Vanderbilt. Because of that, I was able to get started early on. And as for the timings per week, it was varying for me as well, so, like substantially. Some weeks, like there were some days I would spend like a full day on it. Like during winter break, for example, there was one day I spent like 12 hours on something because I just couldn't get it, and I was just like adamant about trying to get it done. But then there's also other weeks where I spent like 5 hours total per week, depending on coursework. I think that the Vanderbilt faculty, including at the medical center, are very accommodating and understanding that students have courses and that there are exams and that there are certain weeks that are definitely going to be more busy than others. It's really just a matter of the students communicating that to their mentors. And I think that it's very flexible in that regard.
Yeah, and going off of that, I think professors and researchers at VUMC are very accommodating, and they really encourage students to join their lab. For me, I had a grandparent recently pass away from Alzheimer's, and I really knew that I wanted to get involved with research with that. So I emailed labs that were doing research related to it and said that I had a personal connection and was really interested, and I received follow-up from all of them. So I think they really just want students who are going to be motivated about the work going on in the lab.
Yeah, just one thing that you all mentioned that in conversations I've had with Dr. Catherine Friedman is that really it's never too late to be interested in research, but just with the processes of learning how labs operate, that the later in in a student's career, it does begin to get a bit more difficult. So if they're interested, always recommend starting as soon as possible and reaching out. And even if it is a lab that might not, be their forever lab or 4-year lab, to go ahead and reach out and start making connections and meeting with faculty, because even I think all of our faculty have a really good rapport with each other and will happily recommend students to each other across both VU and VUMC. So just to kind of build on what's been said. Oh, and actually, just one more thing to add on that. Our office does host every spring in February. We call it Explorations in Research, which is kind of a matching or kind of a chance for faculty to come and present what their lab is doing, for students to come and kind of meet faculty members in a kind of informal setting, kind of learn more what they're doing. Very recently, there was also the Scientific Immersion and Mentorship Match Day, which is a different office than ours, but another resource that will be coming up again next fall for any students that are interested in kind of go and meet faculty. And it's across humanities, hard sciences. Everybody is represented, and a lot of really cool stuff.
Any other final questions before we getting a little bit close to the end of time? If not, okay.
All right, well, then we will wrap up a few minutes early. Thank you all so much for coming to this panel presentation. I'd like to also thank my fellow panelists for their talks and experiences and knowing how to study abroad, because that is a wealth of knowledge that I've been here for 9 months and I have just begun to scratch the surface. So Tyler is an absolute legend when it comes to study abroad. So thank you all for being up here, and thank you all for attending, and have a great rest of your family weekend.
Thank you.
Why I'm always looking back, never noticing where I really stand, too blind to see beneath my feet the greenest grass.